I am here with Mrs. LaToya Strong of the Strong Foundation.
In 2019, I left corporate America, became a realtor, and the goal was to just help as many families as I could obtain home ownership. I always agree 100% with keeping yourself educated, and there's ways to do that that don't have a dollar sign next to them. Everybody's path and journey looks completely different, but there are so many ways to. Myself as an example, starting entry level as a teller in 2004 simply from a walk-in for a new local bank account. Had a very successful 15 plus years in the banking industry, wore several different hats, worked so many different positions. I learned a lot. I got a lot of financial literacy from that market itself. And the positions that I would advance to, the degree wasn't necessarily looked at. It was just the performance, me being vocal about what I wanted to do. So I would really encourage everyone to just case by case have that conversation on what the end goal looks like, but never feel bad about continuing to educate yourself, because everyone that's successful and at the top is because they are continuing to educate themselves. If I had it all over to do again, like that friend you mentioned, I don't believe that I would have.
So welcome to another episode. I am here with Mrs. LaToya Strong of the Strong Foundation. She is a veteran in the real estate and finance industry as well. She's got 15 years of experience in the real estate industry and another 5 years of experience, 15 years of experience in the finance industry, another 5 years of experience in the real estate industry. Married, 2 kids, has a wealth of knowledge and guidance that she's been providing as a service to clients that have helped them become even greater in terms of being able to accomplish their dreams of home ownership, build generational wealth, and so on. So starting off there,
Yes.
with your background, how did you get started off in the finance industry and everything?
So my story is interesting. I'm originally from Ohio, relocated here, went into a banking center simply to establish local banking. And the manager at that time asked, had I ever considered a field in banking? I'm like, no, I simply just want to establish a local bank. I'm new from Ohio. And at that time, he continued with the account opening process, extended an offer for me to apply, which I followed up on. And a week later, I was working part-time as a teller. I enjoyed it. During that time in banking, I had several different positions, worked with 4 of the largest financial institutions, and worked my way up just through top performance, being vocal about what it was I wanted to do. But it was during that time, Frederick, that I realized that I really love relationship building. Helping clients win financially became really rewarding to me, and so that was my start into the financial sector.
So one question I have is, why the finance and real estate industry? I know the real estate industry is a cyclical industry, and I guess a little bit about me as well. So I come from a real estate background. Both my parents are real estate brokers. They own their own respective businesses, but my dad has been in the industry for over 40 years. My mom has over 30 years of experience in the industry. So I come from a real estate background, having grown up in it, and even as a child, just seeing the cyclical nature of the industry. I mean, it goes through its high points and then it goes through its lows. Obviously, you got the 2008, you got an interesting time with the pandemic that was caused, and I guess we're still feeling some of the effects of that.
Absolutely.
But why real estate?
Real estate came from a place going back to the banking days, discovering that I love the relationship building, helping the families win financially. And the way that I was able to do that, Frederick, again, taking a genuine interest in listening to my clients, getting to know their families. From that, I would match the products accordingly. I would take the time to do introduction to my banking partners at that time. That included the mortgage loan officers, business bank, and financial advisors. And so from that involvement of piquing the interest and getting them over to the partners, the mortgage loan officer, I seemed to have the most success, and it seemed to really be the most rewarding. A home is the foundation. We both share, married with a family, and
Yes.
at the end of the day, you want to unwind in a place that you love and you can, brag about calling home. And so I had also been a renter. I had rented for 9 years due to student loan debt I had received while obtaining my bachelor's degree. Also, the self-employment that my husband still has, paperwork just not in order, not really understanding how important that piece was. So you had the husband who had the income, and you had the wife who had the credit, but putting those two together was a little bit of a disconnect. So for 9 years, we were great tenants. We rented, and at the end of the 9 years, when we were both really ready to go into home ownership, we weren't offered the best terms for a landlord that we had been so loyal to, such good tenants. The terms were not that attractive to us. So immediately we started to seek other options, lucked up and was able to purchase a home in that same community. So in 2018, we became homeowners. Did not have the professional real estate representation at that time. So I leaned back into my background from banking, my strong negotiation skills, and we got to the closing table. But it was at that time, to answer your question, that a light went off. Had we have had that proper representation, terms could have been negotiated a little more favorable on our behalf. Possibly some costs that we could have, negotiated in respect to home repairs, closing costs. And so I decided that I wanted to study for my license. I done that in 2019, a year later. And in 2019, I left corporate America, became a realtor. And the goal was to just help as many families as I could obtain home ownership. And definitely the market that shared that same fear of the student loans, understanding that there is a way to obtain it, being connected to the right lender. And
Yes.
that was where it was sort of driven from.
Okay. And now I want to touch on the education piece, because I know a lot of people are feeling that pinch of student loans. Obviously, being in the finance industry, I view a lot of credit reports that have, student loan debt that's on there, and I know the effect that has on people being able to qualify for purchasing a home and everything.
Sure.
I guess I want to say, like, what are your thoughts in terms of education? And I know there are some industries and some jobs, and we'll get to real estate and finance education in a minute,
Okay.
but just in general terms of the education, and you see like there being a benefit with people going to school, getting tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of debt, and then coming out and job hunting after that, but also, like you said, the effects that it has on you being able to get a home and get started with your life and everything. Do you
Yes.
see that as being an option in the time that we live in, that people should be considering, still putting, I guess, at the front? Because I know for me particularly, there are some industries where I think it's necessary if I ever need to. Hopefully not, but if I ever need to go under the knife and have surgery or anything, I'd like to know that the doctor that was working on me didn't learn his skills from YouTube.
Absolutely.
But
That's so readily available.
but then there's some other skills that, having worked in production, I've worked in production. I've worked on set for a TV studio, television show, and I talked to individuals who had been to film school, and they said if they could do it all over again, they wouldn't go, because most of what they learned on set, working in the film industry, not in a school, learning from an instructor or anything. So what are your thoughts in terms of the necessity of education, especially when you're combining that with the cost of education now, and how that can also play a role in, the course of your life after the fact?
Sure. So with respect to education, you always have to continue educating yourself. That does not mean that you go to some of the colleges and universities that may simply be out of budget, but educating yourself is always going to be the way to stay up with the trends, to be fresh, new. So I always agree 100% with keeping yourself educated, and there's ways to do that that don't have a dollar sign next to them. Also, in respect to, receiving the degrees. We received them. So that's an accomplishment. It's something that no one can ever take away from you. So I do believe that it's a great accomplishment. The question being asked to me, Frederick, if I had it all over to do again, like that friend you mentioned, I don't believe that I would have pursued the undergraduate school myself. However, I know that it shows discipline. It is something that you're able to fall back on when you are in that corporate arena and, possibly going through the interview and selection. Mm-hmm. So having that to fall back on possibly, but it really does boil down to it's going to be case by case. Everybody's path and journey looks completely different, but there are so many ways to, myself as an example, starting entry level as a teller in 2004 simply from a walk-in for a new local bank account. Had a very successful 15 plus years in the banking industry, wore several different hats, worked so many different positions. I learned a lot. I got a lot of financial literacy from that market itself. And the positions that I would advance to, the degree wasn't necessarily looked at. It was just the performance, me being vocal about what I wanted to do. So I would really encourage everyone to just case by case have that conversation on what the end goal looks like, but never feel bad about continuing to educate yourself, because everyone that's successful and at the top is because they are continuing to educate themselves. The loan space, the real estate space, the market, as you mentioned, it's always shifting, it's always changing. Currently, we're in a market where the home prices are the interest rates are higher, as you know. Homes are staying on the market a lot longer, but it will be a shift to where those interest rates do drop. Homes go a little bit quicker. So my thoughts are to, really know what that end goal is and to always be open to educating yourself, but realizing it's ways to do that without going into debt. And that's another topic maybe for another series, but just the specific trades and budget. Budget is something that we'll continue to talk about around this whole real estate purchase. And so knowing your budget and being conservative and sticking with that is really key.
Yeah, no, I think you definitely hit it on the head in terms of what I was thinking, in terms of it is important to forever be in a learning phase where you're always trying to improve, always trying to get better, because the world that we're in right now changes and shifts so quickly. I'm just thinking, just in the 37 years that I've been alive, it's like we went from cassette tapes and, even, some people had 8-tracks or whatever, but you went from cassette tapes to CDs to iPods and to everything's in the cloud now. And then you think of just all the things that have happened with the industry. We're in AI now, where you're needing to learn AI. Social media wasn't a thing back when, we were in middle school and everything. So I think when I was in high school, Facebook started to become, a thing, but it wasn't what it's become now in terms of, that's where everybody generates a lot of their business and everything from, is having that presence online. So needing to be able to learn all of those different skill sets that it takes to operate in today's environment where we're at, I think is definitely speaks to needing to constantly educate yourself. Absolutely. And be aware of that. You mentioned bank tellers, so getting into your time in banking, what are some of the things that you learned that kind of, I guess, either piqued your interest or areas that you felt would allow you to be able to help others from all of that experience that you have? I know when I first came into being a loan officer, there was so much that, even having had a real estate license, I got my real estate license back in 2007.
Okay.
And it was more so, I guess you could say, a natural progression with both my parents having worked in real estate so long and had their own businesses. I was like, okay, I'll get my real estate license. I was actually in college at the time, and got my real estate license in 2007, and then learned a ton in real estate, but never knew anything about the finance side of the coin. It was always just the real estate side of things. And then when I hopped over to being a loan officer, which is my passion now, I just prefer doing financing. I learned so much stuff that I was like, people need to know this, people need to, which is part of why I push out a lot of the things that I push out online so that it can help people. But what are some of the things that you saw as you entered into banking as a teller, and then where it went on from there to kind of give you some insight into areas where you could help people further along, or areas that just piqued your interest and made you want to stay in finance for 15 years?
Yes, so the banking industry definitely is where I can contribute all of my financial literacy to. I have, the family, the parents, they taught me what they were taught. And so one thing that I really recognize right away is that our community as a whole sometimes we're already a couple steps behind when it comes into the financial literacy game, and just the different vehicles you use and understanding using other people's money to get started. And so I think just that whole concept around money handling, savings, and not even the amount that you're saving, but just simply the pattern of saving consistently. From that, I just saw that it was truly a need to have financial literacy as a conversation that we're having at the dinner table in the school systems. If that ever, can elaborate a little more, just so that we are a few steps ahead. When you go to present yourself to a loan officer or a realtor, you've done some of the due diligence and homework yourself, for someone to take you serious and to give you a chance.
School systems is definitely a place where we really could use a lot of financial literacy training. I'm sure you've come across it many times. I've come across it many times as well, where there's just a lot that unfortunately people don't know because it's not taught in the schools. And if you grew up in a household where perhaps your parents didn't know, then you don't know what you don't know.
Absolutely.
And you might not know where to go to get that information, because you don't know. So what would you say are some of the challenges that you see people facing currently, whether it be finance or real estate, areas that you see most people failing in, or things that you perhaps see on the horizon that are going to pose an issue? I know there are the economic challenges in the environment now, but
Sure.
what are some of the things that you see?
So living beyond our means, that's a big one. It's a huge one, because even down to not even knowing, how much, household income is being brought in, because in order to have any concept on saving or this emergency cushion, you'll be surprised at how many people don't calculate, what's just brought into the household on a month-to-month basis. So some of the challenges I would say is, really understanding, what you bring home, and the concept of paying yourself first. And I can even recall back to starting out in banking, in my early 20s, the 401k, it was an absolute no for me. I don't want to put any money to the side. I wanted all my money, and I wanted it now.
So what would you say is the paying yourself first?
Paying
For
yourself,
those who don't know, yeah.
Paying yourself first is money that you don't even touch. It's whether that's transferred, to a savings account, but it's the money that you're preparing for retirement. You're preparing for the unexpected. You're preparing for an emergency. So whatever you make, let's just do easy math, $500 a week. If that's $50 you're putting to the side, that $50 in your mind, you need to be on a pattern of making $450 a week, because that $50 is going to be something that's transferred into another bucket for the different, perspective, titles that, each household may find important. But the paying yourself is most important, because the paycheck to paycheck, I've been, part of that group at some point. I'm glad that I've, rose out of that group, but it's not fun. It's not a good feeling to work and receive, the income from your hard work and really not have a lot to show for it. But knowing how much income is brought into the household, understanding that question of, what it looks like to pay yourself first, is exactly that. You put money to the side and you don't touch it. It's almost as though it doesn't exist. And so you don't calculate that into any monthly income, any travel, expenses, because it's not touched until that time. So I would say that would be, one of the challenges. But the living beyond the means, the applying for multiple credit cards at 18, my mother opted to just take all of that mail from me. It was just, you don't need it. And it wasn't a conversation about you attempting to apply. I didn't do it behind her. And I appreciate that, because it wasn't until maybe the early 20s that I did get my first credit card from the bank that established that account when I came in to get local banking, and I was approved, had a pretty comfortable amount, and I did pretty well. And I knew that using that credit was for the unexpected, maybe a computer, maybe a set of tires, gas, groceries. It wasn't to shop, it wasn't to travel, but some teenagers, unfortunately, the mail starts to solicit them way too early. And if there has been no financial conversation around credit, you shouldn't be applying for that credit card. I do believe in credit when it's used the right way and understanding that you charge it and you pay it back. It's not your money, and it definitely has to be paid back. Never carrying outrageous balances and just charging things that you, quite frankly, have in the bank account to just transfer over and make that payment, in the next 30 days. So that was a challenge, just not understanding that whole credit piece, the savings piece, and just bad habits. What you said, you don't know what you don't know, and a generation that's passing down what they were taught or not taught. At some point, you have to break that generational curse and say, I'm going to educate myself, and this is how my family is doing things. And so living within your means may not look as fashionable as everyone, but in the end, you get it the right way, you accumulate it the right way, and then you can go by and, live the life of luxury that you've earned the right to do.
Yeah. So what would you say are the biggest pitfalls or biggest areas where people struggle to, I'll say, to get to where you are or to continue to grow past where they currently are right now? Because I know a lot of people, I myself included, have been in that crowd of living from the check to check.
Yes.
I remember particularly when I was working in production, it was like, all right, waiting on the next gig because I need the next gig so that I can get the money to be able to make the rent payment and everything. So what would you say are some of the biggest challenges, whether it's self-inflicted wounds or something externally that people are facing that is keeping them from being able to break through that barrier to be more, to have more, to do more? So
Sure. And I'll start with, I am extremely grateful. Let's start there. And I'm still growing myself. So I've reached some levels of success, but there's still growth taking place. I still, desire more and excel in more. But what it boils down to and what it takes to, reach whatever that level of success is. If you are currently renting an apartment and you just want to upgrade to renting a home, if you're renting a home and now you want to buy a home, and you buy that starter home and want to upgrade a home, it's really going to boil down. You really have to make some sacrifices. It's really some discipline, and it's missing out on some things today just so that you can live the life you want comfortably, years to come.
real estate or finance, which one do you have a preference for?
I tend to bring finance into real estate, which is what I like to share to set me apart with the 2 million agents that we currently have out here. The competition is literally, at about a 2 million. But seriously, I like to position myself as banker / realtor. And I say that because you know firsthand how important this whole keeping your job and maintaining the credit and having some money saved in the bank. And so I tend to bring a lot of that finance background to each real estate transaction. And so that's a huge plus in working with myself and my team. I understand budget. I respect budget. Although you issue them a pre-approval for a certain amount, I'm always really straightforward that if we can find the dream home and it does not exhaust that entire pre-approval, it's okay. And so I would both. I'm doing both in my day-to-day currently.
And there's a benefit to having both, because having that knowledge of the finance does help you to be able to better educate your clients as well with the negotiation piece of everything, where they can kind of put that money in terms of just doing a price reduction or having it go toward closing costs or even buying down interest rates or anything like that could have a bigger impact on their monthly expenses.
Yes.
So no, I definitely think that's key and good that you have that background. But on the real estate side of things, what would you say are some of the tripwires or the pitfalls that you see a lot of people getting caught up in when it comes to real estate?
The agents or the buyers?
The buyers.
The buyers. So some of the things that I see buyers being challenged with today is lack of education, terminology of the whole real estate language. And so, again, a realtor like myself, I pride myself on keeping my clients extremely educated, in the know with all terminology, acronyms that we use, and just the entire process from start to finish. But lack of education and terminology sometimes can be a challenge for the buyers. Also, thinking that you can do it without representation. I gave the example of doing it myself in 2018, and although we made it to the closing table, it was a lot more that could have been negotiated on our behalf had we have had that proper representation. So when you buyers think that you are cutting costs and saving by representing yourself, in the end, you're really not. But it's also key to have the right representation, because there is a difference, a distinguish between a real estate agent and a realtor. A realtor like myself, I am a part of the National Association of Realtors, so we are required to stay up to a higher code and expectation, and so the right representation from that professional standpoint, as well as just what matches best with you, someone that you like, you trust. And I think that representation, just to get the negotiations favorable on your side, some things you don't know to ask about. You don't know that there's a home warranty that you can possibly have in place for 12 months when purchasing the home, or some of the things that can impact the safety and the structure and the systems that absolutely should be addressed prior to you taking ownership. Other things, if you need additional time to stay in the home, that can be negotiated. And so the professional representation is just helping you to negotiate terms that are favorable for you. And then outside of that, I would say sometimes the voice of family members and friends who have purchased a home legit, but in a very different market. So not getting so caught up on what it was like when mom and dad purchased a home, or possibly the best friend or the cousin or the church member, because as we have talked about here today, this shift in market, when the market is favorable to the sellers or buyers, that's something important that you have to know.
Okay. So talking about the market, since you mentioned the market, where do you see the market at right now? Do you think it's a good time for people to buy? Do you think people should kind of wait until, I guess, the market turns a little bit in their favor? I know there's a lot of talk around, and no one knows what's going to happen in the
Sure.
future. It's all speculation until it actually, comes to pass. But where do you see the market at right now? And then I guess the follow-on question to that is, where do you see the market going in the near future?
Today's market is, we're at a time where the interest rates, it's no secret, interest rates are higher. The days on the market, homes are sitting on the market a lot longer than they had been in previous years. But because real estate is always and forever shifting, and you are absolutely correct with none of us really knowing, outside of the fact that it is always going to shift, it will go back to where the interest rates have dropped. And the homes are going a lot quicker, and then you have the bidding wars and multiple buyers all seeking that same home. Is it a right time? I get asked that question all the time. Absolutely, it is, based on your goal of home ownership. I appreciate being a homeowner. I appreciate helping other families obtain that goal. And so it's really your timeline. And so if home ownership is something that you are seeking to get, I would say it is the best time. Again, it goes back to knowing your timeline. If this is truly a goal that you have, having that right representation, and it can still be obtained. And although we're in a market where some would say it's more buyer favorable, because it's given myself as an agent more room to make those negotiations on my family's behalf. But sellers, I like them to know that in this market, in essence, sellers are also buyers, because typically they're upgrading, downgraded, relocating. And so one thing to mention in this market that is a little more favorable to buyers, sellers becoming buyers, also knowing that the market going upward, from a home equity, the equity that these sellers have in their homes, using that equity to purchase the new home that they purchase. Is a way that they can also leverage the market. That's a free little nugget I threw out there that you usually get only with working with me. But yes, that's where the market is today. Where I see the market going, Frederick, again, continuing the shift. And so the only way to go when rates are up or for the rates to go down. If the homes are lasting longer, the homes are going to go quicker. But both markets, I'm equipped to negotiate accordingly, get it done. And I say, don't put off that goal of being a homeowner if that's truly what you want to do this year.
Okay. Sorry, I had one other question before I wrap things up and everything, but if I'm able to pry another nugget out of you, I wanted to ask, what would you say are the top considerations that a home buyer looking to purchase should be considering if they're what should they be considering in terms of if home ownership is right for them, if it's the right time for them, and then also when it comes into the negotiation piece of things, I know that's something that in the competitive market that we have right now, inventory is still low. It's starting to build back up, but it's especially in a city like Atlanta where it's growing rapidly.
Sure.
You've got low inventory and everything, so trying to be competitive and everything like that. But I guess the primary question being, what would you say is one of the top one or two considerations that buyers should be considering when determining whether or not they should take that step into home ownership, or if they should hold off? I mean, is that something that they should be basing upon what's available in the market right now, what they can currently purchase right now? I mean, I've had a few people that I've spoken with who have decided whether or not they want to purchase based on the inventory that's available, or what they're able to afford from the inventory that's available. And I guess really quick, what I'll say by that is there are, let's say if you're entering into the housing market and you're only able to afford X amount of dollars,
Sure.
and that won't get you the house that you really want. Should I, in that case, just wait until I can get what I really want? Or do I jump into the market at what I can afford now and then scale up from there? These are all the considerations that at least go through my mind, and I'm sure go through a lot of other buyers' minds when they're thinking about what is it that I should be considering in terms of, should I jump into the housing market now? Should I wait? Should I wait until I get my finances stronger? Or if I'm approved now, should I just go ahead and jump in?
Yes. So it was a couple pieces of that question.
It's a lot of pieces of that question. Yeah.
Some very good pieces. I want to make sure I address all of them. The considerations to consider, I find, taking it back to myself, renting for 9 years. During those 9 years, of course, we would take a look at the possibility to purchase, and we did have the feedback that the sales price was just on a home that we didn't quite want to call home. And so that is a consideration at times. Ultimately, it's going to boil down to, what your ultimate goal is. And I'm really big about continuing on a goal until you can get it done. But the reality of, what you can be approved for versus what you like is case by case because of so many other factors. Because here's the thing, in our case, we had the ability to ride it out for 9 years and rent that home, and done a really good job of continuing to save, continuing to monitor credit. Sometimes people don't have that time frame. Maybe there's an unfortunate life event with a separation of a family. Maybe there's a relocation for a great job opportunity. So if the deadline is pretty pressing, then you may not have as much flexibility. But when you do have the flexibility, I would say the considerations would be to know, what your sales price, what you qualify for, understand the top inventory in that price range to see if that matches. Also understanding the question around, is this a starter home? Is this the forever home? I do a really good job in buyer consultations, Frederick, making sure buyers convey that to me on the front end, but also having that realistic conversation about some must-haves in a home and what are some things I would love to have, that basement or that pool, but we could absolutely move in this home without it, knowing where we can possibly compromise. Because again, if that is a goal, and knowing what we both know about the investment, around having a home and being in home ownership versus renting with the prices the high prices and the competitive that I hear on the renter market, you may have to, be prepared to not miss out on a home if you can just compromise just a little. So when all else, comes into place, if there is not a pressing relocation or, life event, just considering what is most important to you, being able to be flexible, and above all, just continuing to save. I will say the direction of real estate, it's going to look like having. It does require money to purchase a home. There are programs and, things available, but there is cost associated with buying a car, buying a home. And so you do want to always have some money saved, even if it's quite frankly just to add your special touch to the home from a decor standpoint. You just want to be prepared to have some money saved. So consider, am I doing a good job saving right now? Can I get better at that saving? Am I pending, adding to my family? Am I pending, leaving my job? Because it's very important to keep a job when you go down the road of, purchasing a home. So it is definitely case by case, and you really need to know if there's a timeline that's requiring you to get it done. And we're definitely equipped to get it done, still making sure you're in budget. It is comfortable, but sometimes, more often with my sellers, I found that in these attractive markets, they may simply test the market. If it's as good as what they're saying, I got 50 people putting an offer on my home, let's give it a try. And if you get what you want, we're going to sell. If not, I'll update it and continue to reside in the home. So with each family, during a buyer's consultation, I would really want to understand what is most important, the goal, the timeline. And from that, we could kind of navigate, is this the time? But I absolutely agree with home ownership, and I absolutely believe that everyone has the ability to purchase. The timeline just can be different, whether that's 2 months, 2 years, and you really have to be diligent, partner with a passionate team like myself and your team that really, take the time to get that buyer and that family there.
No, absolutely. Well, no, there is a whole lot that we are not able to unpack in just one episode. So no, we'll definitely have to talk about having you back on so that we can delve a little bit further into some expertise and pick your brain a little bit about some of the stuff you have to offer. One question that I do like to end with:
Okay.
if you could do anything in the world and be guaranteed that you would not fail, failure was guaranteed you weren't going to fail, what would you be doing? Would you still be doing real estate, or would there be something else? It could be anything in the world, but if you could do anything,
Yes.
guaranteed that you would not fail. You could be a professional athlete if you wanted to. It could be anything. You were guaranteed not to fail. What would Mrs. LaToya Strong be doing if you couldn't fail?
So it's funny you asked that question, because I reached a milestone this year in January, and I reassessed and had that same thought come across my mind. And so hosting has always been my passion, hosting, organizing people. And so in any capacity of hosting, bringing people together, and I think I've done that through the bank aspect. When we would bring the bank to the job, I enjoyed that most. With real estate, the home buying seminars that I got away from may bring that back. It's still bringing people together, giving them the home information, tips, and guides that we said we will, meet again to elaborate more on. I enjoyed that the most, but I really enjoy hosting, extremely social, bringing everybody together. And I would have a space similar to the one we're recording in, to host events. Content is really big these days, but I really enjoy that. That is my ultimate goal, to own an event space. I'll be the realtor on that transaction to secure that commercial space and have it opened up for my creatives to come in and do exactly what we're doing on such high levels, and just keep it fresh and fun.
Awesome. That's good, especially because your interests are still in the area where you currently are. So, and I think all of those things are attainable. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for, just taking the time to just speak with me, educate all of the people that are listening right now. And speaking of the people listening, where is it that they can find you at? Where's the best places where they can locate you?
Instagram and Facebook, to be specific, at Strong Foundation Realty altogether. You can follow me on both of those social platforms. website is also strongfoundationrealty.com to see available listings and more of the team. And yeah,
Okay,
let's stay
awesome.
connected.
And I'll put links in the description to those as well, so that everybody will be able to easily access where you're at to just get in contact, have some of those buyer consultations, or anything else that services that you provide. So thank you again for taking the time.
Thank you for the time. It was my pleasure.
Alrighty, that's what we have until next episode. Take care. Be blessed.